Before our story begins, here is a word from our sponsor.
Have you ever found yourself stranded in the bathroom with no more toilet paper? Do you burn through your wallet by buying endless rolls of the dreaded stuff? If this loathsome lifestyle applies to you, then I've got great news. Introducing InfiniWipe. It's the newest, most complex, reusable toilet paper technology the Western world has ever seen. After a platoon of U.S. soldiers was rescued from a Soviet prison, the soldiers gave the engineers at NASA insight on how the Russians were so efficient in their zero-waste toilet paper system, leading to the development of InfiniWipe. Just one sheet of InfiniWipe will last a whole year. A simple wash after every use will save you thousands of dollars that you otherwise would be wasting on conventional toilet paper. So, are you ready to make the switch?
The smell of cigarettes was intoxicating as George King walked down the dark street of Marysville at night. To anyone else, the smell would have been too much to handle. However, to George, who has lived on this street for almost all of his life, he was used to it. It was also raining that night, and a bitter wind was making George's wet clothes feel like ice strapped to his body. He didn't mind, though. He had one purpose tonight, and he was going to see it through. He walked by a street jazz band, and the sound of their music gave him strength and comfort. The music had no order to it. It just flowed like a river of peace and purpose. He came to an intersection and hit the button for the crosswalk, indicating that he could cross. The voice from the speaker said, "Wait," in that cold, robotic voice, but later turned off from the infectious rain. George looked to his left, then to his right, and saw a beaten-down park bench. A vivid memory suddenly came back to haunt him. He remembered the time when he took his son to the park and suddenly received a phone call from an anonymous, asking him about his life and profession.
Hey George, remember me? I hope you remember me, George, because I definitely remember you. Do you remember? When you were gone late at night with your wife at the Italian restaurant you always go to, and when your life completely turned around. Look around, George. You said you were going to play with your kid. I don't see him, George. Go find him, but don't worry, I'll take great care of him. I can assure you that. George, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Look to your right and you'll see a beaten-down bench. Go to it, George.
The man kept getting louder after each instruction, clearly displaying his power and control over the situation.
Now, George, you'll find a package on the bench. Pick it up and go to a room where sound can't be heard, as there will be a great noise after you open the package. George, are you there?
Who are you? What do you want? Give me my son back, you bastard!
Now, George, I'm going to need you to cooperate. You surely don't want to open this in public. Do not open it in public, George. You got it?
George started to cry, but tried to keep it in by clenching his mouth closed and letting sudden gasps of air out from time to time.
Okay. I'm in my car now. Can I open it?
Go ahead, George. But just remember, there was a reason for my madness. George, this was because of you and what you've done to our relationship.
George opened the package and began to scream louder than he could ever imagine. People could hear the vibrations that rocked the car and became extremely concerned for him. In it was his son's prosthetic leg, along with a slightly burnt picture of George and Jack, his 5-year-old son. Jack was never seen again. George was a broken person after the incident. He never showered, never slept. He got fired from his job because he couldn't concentrate. All he did those days was look at old pictures of Jack and cry. George looked at the bench now, and with shaking hands, pulled out a cigarette and attempted to strike a lighter. But with the rain and his shaking hands, he couldn't. Frustrated, he threw the cig away and put the lighter back into his pocket. The light changed, and George walked across the street. He fell into a large puddle, completely soaking him.
God damn it.
As George got up, he saw a cardboard box and a man sitting on it. It reminded him of the time he had talked to a man sitting on a box similar to the one he saw. It was just last winter. George had been wandering the streets for months, getting change here and there from nice strangers. He was walking down a regular street when he dropped a quarter. It rolled over to a man sitting on a box holding a tin can. The man bent down and picked up the quarter and put it in his tin can.
Hey, that's mine.
No, it's not. I found it on the street and I picked it up. It's mine now. You know the rules of the street. Any money that falls on the ground belongs to no one until a person picks it up.
Please, Just let me have it. That was all I was able to get today.
Ha ha! A beggar begging to a beggar. What's the world coming to? 25 years ago, our numbers were smaller. We had a code and we respected each other. Now our population grows, and with it, there are more people like you, who don't respect the rules. They just want to eat. No honor at all, huh?
What do you mean, our population?
The homeless population. Idiot, what do you think I meant? You think you're still one of them?
The beggar pointed at the pedestrians walking by, continuing to ignore them.
Think again. You're one of us, and you always will be until you kneel over.
You've been out here for 25 years?
Yup, and I've seen things you wouldn't believe. There was this one time I saw a man take a small boy right off the street. Just this little disabled kid, taken in broad daylight. I came to find out later that the boy was murdered. And you know what the killer sent his father?
A finger?
Ah, so you know the story?
I know the story. Because I was the father who received it. Did you get a good look at the man who took him?
No, you ain't him. The father was higher up in society. He wasn't a bottom feeder like you.
Believe me or not, I don't care. Did you get a good look at the kidnapper?
He had a hood on, but at the last minute, his hood came down and I saw a white man, probably in his 30s. He didn't have any hair, but I think I saw a red star tattooed on his temple.
Thanks. There could be hundreds of people with that description.
What were you planning to do? Think you're some sort of vigilante?
Suddenly, the man on the box grabbed his chest and he kneeled over off the box. George went down next to him and called at people to help. However, no one did. It wasn't until 10 minutes later that someone finally listened and called 911. However, it was too late. The man had suffered from cardiac arrest. George felt like he had been reborn again. He was not going to die on a box after 25 years of suffering and begging. He was going to find the person who did this to him and take him down or die trying. Fortunately, George got a lead. Right before the beggar died, George was able to hear the beggar mutter his last words.
George, you've proven my trust. I can't imagine how you feel right now. Just remember this, George. Find the people with the red stars. If you find them, you'll find the killer of your son. Remember, the red star has many points, but all of its points come back to its red center.
Here's another word from our sponsor.
Everyone knows that there's no better snack than beef jerky to really show off your masculinity. But how do you know what brand to get that ensures you get the juiciest piece of meat to satisfy your carnivorous cravings? Introducing Juicy Jerky. It's the perfect piece of meat, cut only from quinoa-fed free-range Hanu cows from Hwangsaeng County in South Korea. Every slab of meat is guaranteed to make your mouth water. Juicy Jerky, the best money can get.
George made his way to the nearest gun store and bought a revolver. He devoted his life to tracking down the Red Star Man, and after months of research, he tracked down the man to Jack Bunny's bar. George walked in and saw only two people sitting at a bar. The bartender was washing glasses at the opposite end of where the two men were drinking. The place was empty aside these three. George pulled out the gun and looked to see one of the men, his head towards his partner. It revealed a Red Star tattoo on his body. Anger filled with George. Pure white hot anger. Without thinking, he raised the gun and fired at the man's back 2 times. The man with the tattoo dropped. His buddy jumped from his seat, pulling out a 9mm handgun and fired at George. The bullet went into George's side and he collapsed, clutching his now bleeding side. He rolled away as another shot from the partner barely missed him. He got behind a table as shots rang out from the man's gun. All of the bullets hit the floor and the table, except one that entered George's arm. George grabbed his arm and got up fast and struck like a python. The next bullet went straight into the man's head and dropped like a sack of dirt. George stared at the two corpses, marveling at what he had done. Justice was finally served. He dropped the revolver at his feet. There was a loud bang and George was lifted off his feet. At the bartender's shotgun blast ripped through him. George hit the wall and slid down onto the floor. As life left him, he thought of his son and the life that he was taken from him.
Free at last. Time to die.